On a red alert.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm Dag. In the room with me, I've got co-host Renzo and guest host Kurt Onstad from Welcome to Geektown Podcast. Hey Kurt, how's it going?
It's going very well, thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. It was a lot of fun being on your Secret Invasion show earlier this year.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with you as well. You definitely had a lot to add to the conversation, and I appreciated it.
What's been really crazy is the fallout in the media ever since. Everyone's like, it's the weakest entry. And I'm like, I had a lot of fun watching that one.
I enjoyed it as well. I always try to find the joy in everything. I look at the positives for the most part. That's part of the theme of Welcome to Geektown is to find the positive and to enjoy what you enjoy, and that if that makes you a geek, then that's great.
100%. Renzo, did you see Secret Invasion?
I have not yet, no.
Oh, right on. Well, it's all out now, so, get your Sam L. Jackson fix before Disney puts it back in the vault, or whatever they do to their streaming shows now that they claim don't make any money.
It's typically my policy. I wait till the full thing's out. There are very few things I watch week to week. Star Trek, I'll watch week to week. The Expanse, I watched week to week. A few others here and there, but for the most part, I wait till it's done and then I marathon it. So I'm definitely planning to catch up on it sometime this next week.
I gotcha. Well, for the audience, we're not going to do any Secret Invasion stuff. We are going to do our Strange New Worlds Season 2 wrap-up. Basically, if this is your first wrap-up with us, we're going to go through the season, and each of us is going to present our opinion of where this episode ranked in the season. All three of us have completely different establishment criteria for how we ranked them, so if you agree, disagree, feel free to drop a comment, tweet us at Beyond Trek Pod, and let us know what your thoughts were for Season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. This is your spoiler alert. Alright, so Episode 1 kicks off. The list that I have doesn't even have a name for this episode. They just called it Episode 1 on the list. So
The Broken Circle.
The Broken Circle. What did you think about this episode?
So I thought it was a pretty decent return to form. I don't think it was a stellar episode. I think it had some cool questions to it. I liked seeing the whole Klingons and humans working together to restart a war for the sake of profit. Like, I like the attack that it is on capitalism, essentially. I like that. This season as a whole, though, was so strong. I can't rank this very high as a result of how much better other episodes were. The highlight for me was seeing that crazy hodgepodge crossfield class ship at the end that they had put together. I thought that was really fucking neat. I thought that it was cool. If that's what all the crossfields looked like except the Glenn Discovery, then that's even cooler. But yeah, I put it at a 7 or 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
I ranked it lower
best,
than that.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I have the same ranking of number 1 being my favorite episode in the season, and number 10 being the last, and this one is my 9.
Oh.
There wasn't really anything about it that stood out to me, and it frustrated me that they ended the season kind of splitting everyone up, and then this episode was, well, let's get everyone back together now. It was kind of perfunctory to me, and so, like I said, with nothing really standing out, it ended up near the bottom of the list.
Well, it's one standout thing that a couple of people have mentioned to me about this episode was Spock's interactions with the Klingons as being like a precursor for his history with Gorkon. I did think that was really cool too, but I'm generally with you. It doesn't have too much standout. What about you, Dag? What did you think?
I rated this one a 6. This was my 6th favorite episode of the season. I did really appreciate the sort of precursors to Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country that was laid here, and it really helps flesh out that this whole Klingon Federation underground kind of war profiteering thinking predated Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country. Like, it wasn't just, oh, hey, suddenly we're working with the Klingons, but no, it recasts Admiral Cartwright in a whole new light. That you've got perhaps a captain in his own right during the time of Strange New Worlds who is, jaded from the Klingon War and realizing who the real winners and losers are behind the scene, and he works his whole career to sort of push an agenda that culminates at the end of Star Trek 6.
I hadn't really made that connection to Star Trek 6 with the show. I'll have to go back and rewatch it with that in mind.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. Any other thoughts on the Broken Circle?
It was notable to me also in that Pike was barely in it, right? He goes off to who knows where for the full episode. We don't really see him. So, like, the stealing the Enterprise scene, like, all that's delightful. Spock having to do it first before Kirk ever does it. Like that too. That was good callbacks there. But yeah, I think it's a really good episode. It's just not as good as much of the rest of the season for me.
I think that's a strong sentiment.
Now, you reminded me of something with Spock taking the Enterprise. How do you guys feel about the catchphrase?
I would like the ship to go.
I find it very cringe to use the modern parlance for it, this whole like fixation on the term or the phrase that they use to get out of things. But the fact that they had the Pelia scene just before it, where Pelia is the one that helps them break the ship free, I was just too much in love with Carol Kane to even care about the catchphrase for that.
Fair enough. I love me some Carol Kane. I do a second podcast called Gothamites with my co-host Carla, and we are rewatching the show Gotham, and Carol Kane is Penguin's mother in that. Wow.
So she's probably perfect.
She is great as Ms. Kubupat. She has this, she does the accent, of course. So it's great to see her there and here at the same time.
Wasn't Paul Rubens his father in that show?
Yes, he was. Although we haven't gotten that far into the show yet.
Okay.
I did watch the first two, maybe three seasons of Gotham. I thought it was fun. I thought that the whole you can't set a date for when it's taking place aspect to it to be very interesting. Cars from the 40s, outfits from the 60s, computers from the 90s, that whole like mishmash thing, very neat to me.
Yeah. I was the newbie to the show when we started the podcast, and I had watched like the first 2 or 3 episodes when it originally aired, and now that we've gotten into season 2 and things are getting really bizarre, it's a lot of fun. So it's a fun show, and it's a fun podcast too.
And of course, the strange fun fact there is that Paul Rubens played Penguin's father in Batman Returns as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So they brought him back.
To the late Paul Rubens, everybody.
So, shall we move on to Ad Astra per Aspera?
Ad Astra per Aspera. Yes, we shall.
So,
Kurt, would you like to kick us off on this one?
Sure. This is my number 1.
Your number 1 for the series, for the season.
For the season. This is I love a good speech. I love a good legal drama. I love people being at the top of their game and being the best version of themselves. And Una throughout this episode is perfect on those fronts. This, of course, is going to get comparisons to Measure of a Man. I also think there's, it can be seen through a trans lens potentially. There are so many ways to view this episode, and I think everyone was just firing on all cylinders with this one, and so I put this as my number one, as my top pick.
A fantastic choice. Renzo.
I love this episode. I'm a sucker for a courtroom episode as well. I actually think it's the best like court martial or trial episode in Star Trek. I think it's the best one. I think I enjoy it more than Measure of a Man, to be honest. The only one that might be on the same level as one with Nora Sati. Can't remember her episode's name. Drumhead. I think Drumhead might be at the same level because that's my favorite one from TNG. But it's certainly better than Rules of Engagement and all the rest. Right? It's such a good episode. I think that the casting choice they made for the defense attorney was perfect. She kicked ass in it. I like the fact that Pike was not the one to give the big rousing speech at the end. It was the lawyer that did it. I really thought it was well done. Sure, I have some nitpicks here and there about like some of the like legalese that they create as a result of some of this, like some of the things that you'd expect to be law because of some of this. Like, I do think it's a little strange that a essentially military officer is the one that determines asylum. That's kind of weird, but I can headcanon my way around it, so I don't care. I really like this episode, and until I saw two of the subsequent ones, this would have been my number one for the season as well, but instead it ends up being my number three because I just fell in love with two of the other episodes. So I really think this is a great one. This is such a strong episode.
I would have to agree. The whole time I was sitting with my husband, I was feeling levels of validation and even like radiant euphoria from the recognition, as you said, the allegory for, transgender recognition and respect was completely solid in our house. Whether that's what other people took away or not, I really hope that it did inspire them in ways that they have felt unrepresented. If that was their takeaway. Just in my household, that's where we went with it. I didn't rank it as high as either of you simply because I am a sucker for certain themes that perpetuated themselves in a couple of episodes, and I just had to lean into those. I put this as my number 5, so it's halfway through. Which really, to anybody listening, that doesn't mean it was awful. It just means that I found 5 more episodes, I found 4 more episodes ridiculously good.
Yeah, all of the shows, all the episodes, there's none that I would say are bad per se, but obviously, you're making a ranking, something has to go on the bottom.
100%. Next up, for our number 3, we have Tomorrow, and Tomorrow.
You go first this time, Dag.
Gee, I wonder why. As I said just a few seconds ago, I'm a sucker for certain themes, and time travel will always rank high with me. It was really wild for me. La'an has grown on me a lot this season. Not to say that I disliked her as a character, it's just she got a lot more growth. And in this episode, she ends up in a parallel reality on a parallel Enterprise facing Vulcans who seem to be on the edge of extinction themselves. And we've got a Jim Kirk from the Earth Space Alliance. He ends up
United Earth Fleet, I think.
Yeah, it was something. It was one of the first names they came up with in TOS that Kirk had said in the first season of TOS, but I can't remember what Kirk said in this episode. But it was not the Federation. It was not Starfleet. Her going back in time and having this ethical dilemma with Kirk, who in every universe is just the pinnacle of charisma, apparently. And of course they share a very intimate moment. It dawned on me about 25 minutes into this episode. I'm like, we're obviously going to end with the happy ending where we're in our universe, and of course that Kirk isn't in our universe, so he's gonna He didn't bite it, but he took a bullet anyway. Getting that canon sort of time slide on the eugenics wars was mind-boggling. It was such a great moment to see the recognition on screen for that. But to know there are Romulan temporal agents on Earth at this time, that's kind of creepy and makes me wonder if that was one of the sort of dangling threads of the temporal Cold War.
So I also really like this episode. Wait, you didn't say what number you ranked it at, though, Dag.
Oh, that's right. Episode 3. Episode 3 ranked at. I ranked it in the wrong order. It's in my top 3, so episode 3 was my number 3 episode.
Nice. I'm very close. I ranked it at number 4 for myself because I also love time travel. I loved the eugenics war time slide and the whole timey-wimey bullshit about how time pushes back so that things that have to happen still happen. It's ridiculous. I love it. It's perfect for Star Trek, right? Like, it follows through in a lot of the tropes that we've seen throughout things, like traveling back to 1996 in Voyager. But they also mentioned that the eugenics war hadn't happened yet. Like, it's a really good episode. I like the development of the character for La'an and how she develops this crush, this attraction towards James T. Kirk, but not a Kirk that she will ever meet again. Like, it sets up good stuff for her as a character in the rest of the season. It's a good caper as well. And the guest baddie that we had, the Romulan agent there, was also a really good character. She was very well acted. Overall, it's a fantastic episode. So it's my number 4.
It's Rain Robinson with a twist.
Evil Rain Robinson.
Well, I guess I'm going to be the odd man out on this one, because even though I love time travel normally, this one I put as my 8.
Ooh, I'm curious. Tell me more.
Well, I don't know. It didn't seem to follow the rules that Star Trek has set up for time travel. To me, it seems like the time travel, the way it works in Star Trek, is that every time travel bit has basically happened. It's kind of a closed loop, and we'll get an alternate timeline here and there, but when you come back, what you did fits into what you already know. And so it kind of broke those rules to me a little bit as I was watching it. And then, I don't know, I did like the relationship with her and Kirk and how that affected later episodes in the season, but I didn't believe it in the episode. And so that was a large part of that episode, was that relationship, and it just felt so quick and unearned that it bothered me. And so, for those reasons, even though, again, I do like time travel normally, and none of these episodes are actually bad, but this one, I put down near the bottom.
I recognize that the relationship felt quick. In my rewatches of TOS and TNG, all of them feel quick to me. And so I think that's just a limitation of the format.
Yeah, I'm somebody who's never fallen head over heels in love with anybody overnight, right? I'm always like, I have to know you for a couple of years before there's any sort of spark like that, right? But I know people who have fallen head over heels, so I don't discount it as being a real thing. And under their situation, I guess the whole trauma that they're going through, the pressure, the stress, I can see where it's kind of possible. I just really think Paul Wesley does a really good job of selling his role, his Kirkness in this episode too.
Yeah, I really appreciated that Kirk got to show that he was a genius, even if chess is the oldest, narrative ploy in the book to show that someone's smart.
He it was at her pool, right? Like, is he gonna go and pool shark people?
Yeah, I suppose that could be the other thing, but I mean, you don't know chess sharks, but I guess I'm just glad they still have chess in his 22nd or 23rd century.
Yes, but 3D chess is apparently grown-up chess, and 2D is baby chess.
Well, to someone who has been acclaimed on all levels as a child prodigy, that would be Jim Kirk. Next up on our agenda is Among the Lotus Eaters.
I didn't love this one. This is my number 9 for the season.
Ooh.
I like the fact that it has a novel twist on how they lost their memories. It's a radiation that blocks out parts of your brain. Cool, got it. But the whole trope of everybody's lost their memory and needs to figure out why they're there, it's been done a lot, right? It's even been done in Trek quite a lot.
Conundrum.
And I don't think, yeah, I just don't think this one does enough to make it stand out. The setting is neat. It's very medieval. I like the fact that the villain of it is this like former Starfleet dude who got left behind. That's pretty cool. But overall, it was not spectacular as the rest of the season for me.
Okay, fair. Kurt?
Yeah, this is on my lower end as well. I put this at number 7. But there are parts of it that I do definitely like. Like you, I enjoyed the Starfleet, the former Starfleet officer as the villain. I thought that guest star did a great job with that. And, yes, we have done this before. Data's lost his memory. Troy, I think. Yeah,
everybody from Voyager in that prison planet, right?
Right. So obviously we have done this before, but I thought it was really well done, and I thought of the early episodes, of this first half of the season, I really liked specifically Anson Mount's performance in this. I thought he did a really good job of both his usual self and then what he was like without his memory, and the relationship between him and the other captain, and how this kind of brought him back to her. I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
That's actually a notable part, right? Like, this is the first episode of this season where we really have a lot of Anson Mount. We have a lot of Pike in it. So the previous ones, he's not in them a huge amount. So it was good to have him here, and I think his relationship with Captain Batel is, like, believable. They seem like people who've known each other for a long time, know each other's ins and out, and now they're going to try the next step. So, yeah, I track.
I don't know if you guys know the behind-the-scenes reason as to why Anson was not present for the early episodes or not.
I would
Babby.
love to know.
What was that?
Baby.
Yes. He and his partner had a baby, and so he basically took some paternity leave, so had very little to do in the first few episodes of the season.
That is awesome. I don't know how SAG rules work for paternity leave, but as somebody who works in leave administration, I'd be curious to know.
What did you think?
Also rated this a 7. I appreciated the radiation memory loss thing. The thing that really held it up for me as a continuity junkie is that this is sort of a soft sequel to the Cage, because this is the planet that he is represented in his mind when he's on Talos, and he is battling
Big Brute Man.
They talk about that kind of style of that. They talk about that encounter. The planet is mentioned. He in his opening monologue when Christopher Hunter, Jeffrey Hunter, who plays Pike in The Cage, is giving his captain's log about the 3 yeomans that he lost. He's talking about this dude. The other 2 died, but this guy survived that encounter. And then, in keeping with that big hulking brute guy, his clothing was very East Asian inspired, and so you see that art and that clothing and that aesthetic reflected in this episode. So I thought that was really cool. Cal and I were really like jonesing out about the detail of in the costumes and what was in the cage. They're like, what can we scramble from some other, stage, some other closet somewhere. This turned it into a very intentional direction, and I kind of like that a lot. But just in relation to the rest of the season, it fell here. Like, I'm not gonna lie, my top 5 are really easy, and then the rest of them are just like, I gotta put these somewhere. Okay. But I do also like how this is sort of a launching platform. It's almost an allegory for Pike's relationship with Battelle, and just being able to recognize the important things. Episode 5, Charades. Kurt.
All right. Well, okay. One word.
4 letters. Okay. Oh, it's number 4. Got it.
There we go.
Playing charades.
Yes. So this was my number 4. I love a good farce.
Hijinks?
I love I love when hijinks ensue. And this just had that all over it. I think Anson Mount's comedic timing was perfect in this. I think Ethan Peck did a great job as human Spock. There were a couple of moments in there that were a little cringe to me, to use a term that was used earlier. Him over laughing was I was like, okay, that's enough. We can we can ease back on that. But overall, it was just such a fun episode. T'Pring's father was hilarious. All of the relationship stuff there, and the fact that it leads to the Chapel Spock romance finally being consummated. Just loved it. It's only number 4 because there are 3 episodes that I enjoyed even more for very different reasons, but overall, super strong episode. So much fun.
Right on. I am very happy that you enjoyed it as much as you did. This is my number 10.
Ooh.
Now, again, I agree with you on your acting points. I thought that T'Pring, the actress who plays T'Pring, is able to hold it together really well in the scenes where she should just be laughing so hard. The actor who played her father stole every scene he was in. In the middle of it, Cal pauses it and goes, "Wait, I thought T'Pol said Vulcans don't eat with their hands." And I was like, I don't have answers for you. I don't know where they came up with these appetizers. It's our influence. We're corrupting them. Ethan Peck, of course, masterclass in figuring out the balance of Spock, and in many different ways this season. I'm thoroughly impressed with what he's bringing to the character that we haven't seen before in 60 years of this character being on the screen. My issue lies with this is probably super nitpicky, but I don't think you spend a lifetime training in logic only to completely forget how to employ it when in this kind of a situation. It made the application of logic a biological component of Vulcan physiology instead of a mental and practiced component, which when you compare that to Michael Burnham, who is a full human, who was the first human to be even admitted to the Vulcan Science Academy, it kind of tears down Spock's legacy a little bit.
See, I think Spock still is logical in this episode. It's just that he is also a lot more emotional as well. And those two components fight it out with each other, and because he has little experience with full human emotions, they tend to win that battle during this period when he's fully human.
In some cases, it came off childish. You know, when he's talking to his mother, he's like, "Mom," and I'm just like, the human emotions, in my opinion, should not have been enough to sway his performance in the role as an officer, as well as the seeming deconstruction of his employment of logic. That was my opinion, and that's what I took out of the episode, besides the fact that it was just ultimately hilarious. And I was on the couch going, oh my god, no. Renzo.
So I kind of love this one, right? I can't go as high as Kurt because there are just 5 episodes for me that are just stronger, right? But this is my number 6. I like this episode. I like what it does for Spock and Nurse Chapel particularly. Her character having to go on this like crazy adventure with Ortegas to go down this wormhole extreme to see if they can figure out how to fix him. Love that plot line. I think that Ethan Peck does a masterclass job, like you said, of balancing every old version of Spock and his own version of Spock in this. It's very nice. I think that Anson Mount is amazing in his comedic timing and every facial expression he's making, like with the teapot holding, and so good. But my issues actually are pretty specific to the storyline. I don't understand how this is the first time anybody's fallen through that wormhole, or the first time that anybody's gone exploring the Herkova planet when it's in the same solar system as Vulcan and they've been spacefaring for like a couple hundred years. Yeah, right? Like that part's a little weird to me. Maybe the Vulcans marked it off as do not explore and nobody bothers to break the rule, but whatever.
My headcanon was that they may have explored it, but unlike humans who are a little more risk-taking, their logic said, we're not going to get X distance away from it, and thus never interacted with it the way that the Enterprise did.
That's fair, yeah. I mean, humans in Star Trek are definitely the type to just throw a warp core at it, see what happens. So, I get it. But yeah, I like this episode. I think the performances by both the parents were really good. The mother comes off as the shrill harpy bitch, which is exactly what the role called for, and she does it perfectly. And the dad is like this browbeaten husband who's subservient to his wife. Anytime he's liking something, she tells him, no, don't like it, in other words, and he agrees, follows right along. It's very well done. It's funny, it's a good episode, and like you, Kurt, I love hijinks. I don't think this is as good as Spock Amok, but it's really good nonetheless.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Spock Amok is the greatest hijinks episode of Strange New World so far.
Agreed.
It's always Spock and T'Pring that get the hijinks episodes.
Oh, apparently. And T'Pring herself, fantastic in this one too. Like, as a character, her development was great. She realizes that, like, so even though we've switched bodies, you won't tell me when you're having some trouble today. You don't trust me enough, and then she's like, put things on hold. That's good development. That shows that she's got some spine to herself too, because that is kind of a betrayal at that point, right? And it does set up what happens in Amok Time in TOS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was almost convinced that episode 10 was going to feature hijinks between T'Pring and Stone already, so...
I didn't think we were going to get anything but action in that episode, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we will get there when we get there. We are halfway through our ratings. Episode 6 is Lost in Translation. This episode was the one where only Uhura could hear a certain thing, and she's seeing a zombie Hemmer on the screen. Hi, actor who plays Hemmer.
Bruce Horak.
Oh, gosh. I love that he came back in this season twice. So, yeah. Even though this episode presented some very interesting phenomena and just sort of it almost felt like it Spider-Man'd the plot, in that at the beginning we're here and we're about to pursue something great, but to something we can't control, now we're back here again. Spider-Man is always poor. always lacking for cash. And so those kind of plots kind of just are downers for me. But even though I only rated this as an 8, this was my 8th most favorite episode of Strange New Worlds.
We're simpatico on this one. This is also my 8. I also thought that it was an interesting episode. I do think it's very strange just how often James T. Kirk seems to find himself on the Enterprise or right around the Enterprise. It's a big fleet, right? Why does he keep showing up here? But here he is. I think that he and Uhura's little capers are great. But overall, the storyline's kind of meh. It's another alien talking to me in my head kind of thing. It reminds me a lot of the Organian episode in Enterprise, right? Like when they're just body snatching people. It's okay. It's got some good things. It does some good things for continuity. But overall, it's on the weaker side, so.
One of the interesting things is that at the beginning of the episode, Pike declares that they made him a fleet captain for that mission because there's a couple of ships that are helping him out with it. And then Kirk happens to be here, and I'm like, yes, this goes all the way back to the original series episode where Kirk says he once met Pike when he was promoted to fleet captain. I'm like, oh, so you guys just went fleet captain, not fleet captain, so you could make that work.
I mean, I think that's pretty clever.
We met when we were I met him once when when he was a fleet captain. Oh, and also I met him again when half the fleet was singing for some reason. Do you remember that, Spock? That was weird.
Just so much canon that is like, okay, you guys have to remember that Spock, Kirk, and Uhura are on the Enterprise, and they all had to share in that weird singing moment.
I mean, can you imagine if the writer's room for these shows, for any Star Trek show, didn't have access to Memory Alpha or like a scripts database?
Oh.
Like, it'd be rough.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
It'd be like the first season of Discovery.
Kurt, where did this episode fall for you?
Well, like you guys, it was near the bottom of the list. Oh, wait, no, it's on the bottom of the list.
Oh.
I put this as my number 10.
Okay.
It just felt like it could have been a script of any Star Trek show. There was nothing unique about it to Strange New Worlds. And so, if it doesn't say anything specific about the characters or, bring up new themes or new ideas, then it's not quite boring, but right on that edge. So while I appreciate, like you said, Bruce Horak coming back to be zombie Hemmer, and then at the very end, actual Hemmer, nice to see him return, but otherwise, just if there was any episode in the season that could be completely left out, this one feels like it.
I will say I had one standout scene which I really liked. Pelia and Una in the shuttle. Thought that was a really good scene where Pelia calls out Una for treating her poorly because she replaced her friend Hemmer. Thought that was good. And then Una covers it by saying, no, it's because you gave me a C on this one class. And Pelia's like, bullshit. You deserve the C, but that was a good scene. That was really good.
I that to me felt unearned. I mean, think of how many people Una has lost along the way. And did we really see her and Hammer having that tight or that close of a relationship? Why would Pelia specifically be treated that way when no other character has been?
No, that's fair. I don't think we ever saw a scene with just like Una and Hemmer at any point just together at all. So you're right. It does seem unearned in that sense. But we don't know how long Hemmer was chief engineer. We know Una's been on the ship for quite a while, so maybe they have a lot of history and it's just not something that we've been privy to.
Yeah, fair enough.
These are all very good takes. So that was 6, Lost in Translation. The 7th episode of the season, those old scientists. Oh, where are we at in the rotation?
I'll go.
Okay.
He's my number one. It's an easy one. I was literally at a friend's party. We'd been watching some anime episodes, like hanging out, whatever. And I saw that this episode had been posted randomly in the middle of the evening. So I was like, okay, I have to go. Goodbye. I need to go home. And they're like, no, stay. You go watch it over there. Go watch it on that TV. And I did, and I was laughing my ass off the entire time. It's a masterful work that manages to combine the different energy and vibes of two different shows into one show while without losing either one, right? This didn't feel like a Strange New Worlds episode. This didn't feel like a Lower Decks episode. It felt like both, right? And it takes characters from both of those realities, and we can treat them as real people in both, or in the one episode, right? The way that the voice actors from Lower Decks play their characters in real life was very derived from how their characters move and behave on the animated show, except for the fact that Boimler is very tall. Other than that, they are on point in their performances. I think that the plot device of this like portal on a planet that sends them back in time, yeah, that's about as Trek as it gets. Can't really complain about that. I liked the involvement of the Orions in this, and it's an Orion scientist, so it's bucking expectations and trends. Love that. Love that too. Yeah, this is just such a win of an episode for me. It hits every button I like in things. It's both funny and has new takes on science fiction. I liked it. It was great.
Kurt?
Yeah, I loved it as well. It's not my number one simply because I tend to, for the most part, like the serious episodes more than the funny episodes. There's, like you said, everyone's performances, especially the animated actors who got to go to live action, straight on point. I don't know. I put it as number 5.
Okay.
It's right down the middle for me. I did really enjoy it, but there were just a few episodes that I liked more, and I like Lower Decks, but at the same time, reference humor can get a little old, and even hanging a lampshade on it with the character saying, they make very specific references, don't they? And it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. It's not the Lower Decks is not the most strongly written show. It's and so some of that carries over to this episode, and it feels very kind of light and frothy, and there could have been so much more to the fact that they knew so much about the future. There could have been consequences there that I would have loved to have seen the Lower Decks crew get more serious for a little bit. And so yeah, it felt much more, if it's going to be one or the other, it felt much more like a Lower Decks episode than a Strange New Worlds episode, which is odd because it's a Strange New Worlds episode.
I mean, the animated intro was delightful in that sense too, right? Doesn't that help set the tone? The little sucking parasite on the end of the nacelle in the end too, and the koala.
I did love that they changed up the title sequence for this episode and the musical episode, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, just overall, I enjoyed it, just not quite as much as some others.
One more thing for you, though, just as a thought, just because you made me think about it. I know that we talk about the Lower Decks cast as being like obsessed with previous generations of Trek, and that's just part of their characters. But we saw in this episode that the Strange New Worlds crew is also obsessed with the previous Enterprise crew. We saw Uhura talking about Hoshi and loving how many languages she knew, and Ortegas is talking about Mayweather and how he was such a damn good pilot. Like, there is that good referential of like the previous generation, they're heroes, so we should idolize them some. So I like that they carried that through and added that to the Strange New Worlds cast.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But at the same time, the Lower Decks crew is mostly referencing things that are in their same time. You know, they talk about Worf, you know, Worf's honor. You know, Worf is still alive. You're not referencing somebody who's been gone. You know, you're not hero worshiping someone who is this legendary figure from the past. You're talking about somebody who is still around.
Yeah, but people still use the expression "thanks, Obama," right? Like that was a meme for quite some time, and it could be something similar to that.
Yeah, fair enough. But Obama is the president of the U.S. and Worf was the security officer on one ship in the fleet.
Fair.
Maybe the flagship, but still, you know, not nearly as well known.
No, I definitely agree with you there.
First Klingon in Starfleet has got to be worth something.
True.
All right, Dag, what was your take? Split the difference here.
I mean, if we were to sum the numbers that have been thrown out so far between the three of us, this episode would be a 7, based on your 1 and Kurt's 5 and my 1. Again,
you know, that'd be an interesting thing to check. What is the average of our 3 for how the 3 of us groupally rate them?
That is something that I can do in post. If I can get your lists for where you ranked everything, then we'll just average how we felt about it. I can say that, yeah, my top 5, or the last 5 episodes of the season summed were a lower point value than the first 5 episodes of the season, indicating that I liked the latter half better. This episode was obviously number 1 for me because I am a diehard Lower Decks fan. I love the nostalgia bait and the reference. We used to do 2-hour episodes on 1-hour shows, and then Lower Decks came out and we were doing 2-hour episodes on 22-minute shows, just defining all of the references that came through. Like in this one, when Boimler gets sucked through the portal, what does he say? Remember me. Just like Beverly Crusher did when she got sucked through the portal, because that was her episode. Remember me. It was on my second watch of that when I was like, oh, I missed that the first time around. Like, getting a little bit of Rutherford and Tendi was really satisfying. Seeing Anson Mount as the really disgruntled dad who did not want to be in this situation was perfect. And I mean, I hate to say it, but I inserted myself into Boimler, and with just everything there was everything I would have done. Getting the references to the Enterprise crew was great because nobody talks about Hoshi or Mayweather. Like, people remember Hoshi more than they remember Mayweather, and they only remember Mayweather when they're like, wait, who was the pilot of Enterprise? Oh, yeah, that guy's name I don't remember.
Well, let's be honest, he was the most forgettable character on the show.
That's an argument for another episode.
Fair enough.
I haven't rewatched Enterprise nearly enough, which is why they're all forgettable for me right now. But again, time travel, we do get to flip the script on the Orion stereotype. Just Mariner being Mariner constantly. Like, I was expecting live action to take that more seriously, and they did not, and I appreciated that because Mariner was just talking during all of the meetings while everybody else is talking, and I'm just like, what? Is nobody else hearing them?
But we've all had a coworker like that too, right? That guy who in the middle of somebody else's presentation interrupts with a question and then to argue his point further. Like, we've all known that guy.
Yeah. We do get I felt that we got a couple of things out of this episode that linger through the rest of the season and possibly even the series, where Boimler asks Christine, like, why is Spock so freaking different? And that gives Christine the heads up that she's not in Spock's life in the future. And, like, not only is she not in Spock's life, but she can't be. Like, the future is set and she cannot risk it, so crap. Now she's locked into this different destination in her life. Finding out that Una #1 is the poster girl for recruitment for Starfleet, that's got to be huge to her. after the trial that she just went through, where it was like your fundamental rights of being a citizen of the Federation are at stake, and now she's the poster child for the Federation, for Starfleet, and so that must have been really great for her. And of course, they were trying to weasel around the subject with Captain Pike, and Pike's already like, "Hey, that future you're talking about, I already know about it, and I've accepted it. I'm good. It has nothing to do with that. It's a daddy issue. Thanks." We got some pretty good insights into the characters and stuff like that. We did not get a lot of Ortegas, but she rocked her scenes where she was just zapping at Boimler with everything that she could do. Doug Quaid's I just
Jack
imagine.
Quaid.
Yeah, Jack Quaid. Jack Quaid in the voice booth when he's doing Boimler for the regular show, he's got to be acting it out because his reactions were on par. Every time La'an showed up and he screams, when number one shows up and he just speed walked out of the scene. Yeah, this episode is abundantly full of reasons why it is the best episode of the season for me. And we are down to our last three, maybe not our top three. Let's talk about Under the Cloak of War, episode 8. Is it me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. This hit the number 9 slot for me. Klingon War stuff always gets me with a bit of like, oh, we're going here again, okay. And while it really, really fleshed out not just M'Benga and Christine's relationship, that we got to see a hint of that in the first episode when they took that
Super
pill.
soldier serum.
Yeah, Doc gave me pill and it made me angry. Yeah, super soldier serum. That's a pretty good call on there.
Mirakuru.
Protocol 17 or something. Is that what they called it? It was nice to see traditional Klingon look again. Getting this backstory on M'Benga, it was just so... I just felt so sad watching this episode, and I felt how angry he was all episode. And as someone who strives not to be angry, it hit me personally. I just went in a different direction with it. I didn't appreciate that level of stress coming from the episode. And then the ambiguity at the end, where it's like, we all want it to have been that M'Benga killed him. We all want it to be that. But the writers left it open for it to not be that, if they so choose. Now, you guys might disagree with me, and I'd love to hear some more, but I went first on this one. So, Renzo.
I do not disagree with you. I rank this as my number 10, actually. I was not enamored with the whole storyline of, here's this Klingon war criminal, let's make him an ambassador and put him in with people who fought against him in the war. Just not smart, not good. I get that Starfleet aspires to always be an organization that forgives even the worst transgressions and offers a second chance, but there are practical limitations to humans, right? So yeah, I didn't love this episode. I thought the performance of Dakra was really, really good. I thought that getting the background on M'Benga and Chapel was really nice. It does present me a little bit of like a weirdness now for Chapel's story, like over the course of the character's entire arc. She goes from Starfleet medic to civilian to head nurse to out of Starfleet to into Starfleet again. Like, she's got a lot of wild trips in her career path, and I'm just not entirely sure anymore. But I don't know. This episode just didn't do it for me. I agree that the interesting bit at the end is we don't know whether or not M'Benga killed him. That's interesting, though I don't really care. The character was a monster. He was a terrible person. He just wasn't the terrible person that he was down in the history books for. Terrible person for other reasons. Your turn, Kurt.
All right. Well, once again, I'm the odd man out on this one. I had this as my number 3.
Wow. Tell me more.
I think this brought up so many moral questions, and I love when Star Trek does that. And brings a little Londo.
You have a cat named after Londo Mollari?
I do have a cat named after Londo Mollari.
I love it.
When he was a kitten, he had a tuft of hair on the top of his head that stood straight up. And so, yeah.
So I'm in a similar situation. My dog is named Tuvix. He has pointed ears and a wrinkled forehead and is of a mixed breed. So
nice. So, as I was saying, asking moral questions, making you think really hard about what you would do in that situation. How would you respond? And all of the performances are so good in this episode. I was just transfixed by M'Benga throughout this episode. And, you know, you got to get an extra point for a Clint Howard cameo.
He did great.
And I think this was the best, despite the fact that Discovery basically had an entire season about the Klingon War. I think this was the best Klingon War episode we got.
Yes,
I think
agree.
that says less about Strange New Worlds and more about Discovery. But
fair enough. But
I will say, with what Dag said, I like the fact that they switched it back to more traditional Klingon looks throughout, right? Like, that I think is really good.
Yeah, and it's funny, you guys think it was... I mean, yes, they gave you a little bit of an out by having the translucent door between Christine, and so you don't actually see what happens, but to me it was crystal clear that that M'Benga killed him in basically cold blood, and he and Christine are now basically in cahoots to cover it up. And Pike is like, I have a feeling something else happened, but I can't prove it, so there we go.
I mean, they didn't show any of M'Benga's DNA on the knife when they did their whole little, like, see, it belongs to the butcher moment.
He's a doctor. If anybody's going to know how to clean something, it's him.
Well, and I assume that his DNA was found on it. I mean, he admitted that he stabbed him with the knife. It's not a question of whether or not he did it. It's whether it was self-defense like he tells Pike, or if he just out and out murdered him.
I don't know if that's how I interpreted that last scene either. So I thought there was more of like a question discussion, because it seems like in the conversation that he has with Una, or maybe it was La'an, but the knife itself had the blood of all the people that it expected to have, the three former commanders from the Battle of Jagal, but they didn't know where this sword had been, so they assumed that it was a weapon that Dakar had on him, and that's where it came from, not something that M'Benga had in his lockbox.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with that. And so they had the blood on it that showed that it belonged to him, and, you know, M'Benga basically said, and then he brought it out and I got it away from him, basically, and killed him in self-defense. And so that's what he told Pike, rather than, oh yeah, I'm actually the butcher of
right
planet name that I can't remember.
No, that's
Jagal.
fine.
Jagal. And I had this dagger the entire time.
I don't think I'd call him the butcher of Jagal, even if he was the one that killed those three guys, because, like, they were the ones ordering the murder of civilians and such. So,
well, yeah, it's very up in the air as to why that butcher name gets given. It's
probably a Klingon designation.
Right, yeah, the Klingons call him the Butcher of Jagal because he killed his fellow, because according to the story, he killed his fellow officers when they wanted to wipe everyone out, including women and children.
Yeah.
and he went against that and then came over to Starfleet's side, whereas he actually was the one who ordered the women and children killed, and so that's why Starfleet would call him the Butcher of Jagal now that they
if they know
that
But,
that they know.
If we think politically about this, Mbenga has much more to lose from the revelation of the true Butcher than the actual Butcher does. It
Right.
exonerates him. If he outs Mbenga as the dude who killed the generals, then he loses his status with the Klingons and gains status with the Federation, which is exactly what he wants. He wants that Federation. I'm not saying he's doing I don't think he's doing it like duplicitously, but he definitely is vibing with, I want to be accepted by the Federation. He even goes in that final conversation saying, hey, if you join me, this movement will get off the ground way faster than if I have to do this alone still. And by Mbenga declaring that he and giving him proof, like he knew which general fought the hardest, and he takes the name, I'm the Butcher of Jagal. In that moment, I don't think Mbenga has a choice. He's thought it through. He's going to kill this guy, because if it gets out that Mbenga did it, it's way worse for Starfleet. Tons worse. Worse for Starfleet, worse for Pike.
Could restart the war.
It could restart the war, but it also pushes Decor right into the sweet spot where he wants to be. I didn't do this. You see, this person did it and blamed me, and I've had to live with this legacy for years.
Well, except then Mbenga says, yes, but you ordered the women and children killed. That you're going to have a hard time with Starfleet at that point.
Right, but it makes it hard for everybody. And
True.
in that moment, Mbenga has the most to lose. Like, Mbenga doesn't come out of that clean just because he is the Butcher now. So yeah, I think Mbenga's hand is forced, and he had to kill him. But that's where I go with that. 2 episodes left.
And I think the fact that we had that much discussion about it is one of the reasons why I ranked it so high, is because you can come at it from different points of view. You can see it in different ways. And that, to me, is the best kind of science fiction that makes you think and talk about it.
Hard agree. We are down to just our last 2 episodes of the season. Episode 9, Subspace Rhapsody. Renzo?
Oh, I'll go then. Sure. I ranked it at...
place?
I thought we were at Kurt, but it doesn't matter. I ranked it as my number 2. Would have been my number 1 if not for the crossover episode. I'm a sucker for musicals. I went to go see Khan, a Star Trek musical in New York City. I love the Buffy musical, the Scrubs musical, the Xena musical. Those are all some of my highlights of each of those shows. So I came into this with, unfortunately, very high expectations. So I wanted it to be on the same level as Once More with Feeling. I don't think it got there, but it was really fucking good. It had a good cast. Everybody performed it well. The storyline itself, it's Star Trek, right? Like, there's a subspace anomaly that causes a difference in quantum state so that now our reality requires music. Okay, I mean, it's silly, but that's pretty Trek. I get it. It's no sillier than Parallels, where Worf sees like 11,000 different versions of reality in one episode. Cool.
If only one of those realities had been the musical one.
Oh, dude, imagine a Worf singing.
doing K-pop.
Yeah. It was another episode we got to see Bruce Horak, this time as the Klingon commander that was leading the fleet against them. The songs themselves were good and well written. Some of them are incredibly memorable. I've been playing them a lot, sometimes at the gym, whatever. Yeah, I think Status Report's my favorite, personally.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Keep Us Connected is a close second. Yeah, just overall really good. I don't know. As far as like a standout moment, I think that the conversation that starts the episode, where Pelia suggests let's send it music, and Uhura just plays like anything goes, is fantastic.
Kurt.
Well, I did enjoy the episode, but not nearly as much as you, Renzo. I put this as my number 6.
Mm-hmm.
So just at the edge of the bottom half. Like you, I think I had high expectations. And unfortunately, I don't think it lived up to those expectations. I especially think the music was actually on the weaker side of
Really?
of the musical episodes that I've seen. I've watched a lot of different TV shows do a musical episode, from Buffy to The Flash / Supergirl to The Magicians, Scrubs. I think of all of the various musical television episodes, while personally my favorite song in here, and one that I've listened to multiple times since then, is La'an's Want song.
Change My
How would that
Paradigm.
feel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've listened to that song a few times, and I really enjoy it. I love a good I Want song. But it felt a little repetitive. It felt too much like Once More with Feeling to me. It felt like they did a lot of the same sort of things. I mean, they even, to the point where
They made a reference to Once More with Feeling in it too.
yeah, well, they made multiple references
Yeah.
to Once More with Feeling, with a world of bunnies, and
Anya
somebody
would have
had
kittens.
somebody had a theory, and
Yeah, I
so
consider all of those positives personally.
I think it's reasonable to call out homages to what your source material is, but then you have to do something different, and I don't think they did enough different with this episode. And while La'an's singing, Uhura's singing, those were both top shelf, everyone else sounded a little overproduced to me. So I don't think they had the strongest musical cast necessarily.
That's actually my one note that I wish they would have done on this episode. I wish they would have brought in somebody to the episode for a one-off guest star role or something, like what they did in My Musical and Scrubs, right?
Mhm.
Just have someone from Broadway, some stellar, spectacular singer to add to the cast for just the episode to help carry things a little bit. Overall, yeah, I mean, I think you're right on with what your criticisms are. I just don't think that they managed to detract me from the fun. Also, Kurt, could you wiggle your mic a little bit? I think we're getting a little bit of weird noise from it.
Oh, yeah, that happens sometimes, and that's especially a Londo thing. I have to unplug it and plug it back in to get rid of that. Give me a second.
Fixed. There you got it.
Oh. Okay.
Perfect.
I probably need to replace this mic at one point or another.
I was over here like tearing my system apart, going through my receiver, going, "Oh crap!"
You're very low, Dag.
I've had that issue
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I can barely hear you now.
I messaged you also, Dag, while it was happening, and I saw you tearing things apart to let you know that it was coming from Kurt's mic.
Check.
Is there
check.
anything you
Perfect.
want me to say over that
No, it's gonna be
to
fine.
get clean? Okay.
Sweet.
So, what did you think of the episode?
You and I were of a similar brain cell, Renzo. I ranked this as my number 2 of the season. I have been a sucker for musicals. When I heard at the beginning of the season that Star Trek was going to be doing something no Star Trek had ever done before, my brain instantly snapped to they're gonna do a musical, and I don't think I was disappointed. I need to watch the episode a couple more times and maybe see if I can poke some holes in it. But um, the All Systems Ready is just a perfect medley, and then you get 9 power ballads about self-discovery and insight and introspection. Like, please roast me on a fire, Daddy. I'm cooked.
I think Pike would definitely cook you.
Yeah, breakfast with Pike. Which one of us is breakfast? So, yeah, I mean, All Systems Ready. The finale is equal parts silly and awesome. We get
Klingon boy band.
Klingon, yeah. They called it K-pop, but I'm like, it's rap. It's Klingon pop.
Yeah.
Bruce Horak, pleasant surprise. Loved that. Celia Gooding being able to do what she does best and has for years. Giving us that insight into Uhura's character. Like, the writers clearly realized that Uhura in our timeline didn't have a romantic partner besides Scotty in Star Trek V, and that was kind of weird. And so they built that into her character to be like, you create the connections, and they showed us how she accepted that. And I think that speaks a lot to people who might feel alone out there and constantly feel like they're the ones who are always like trying to get people together and make those connections, but they're also not connected themselves. Really inspirational on that front. La'an's just heart-shattering. I want to be this other person, but I don't know what any of that is like, and I tried it once, and look how it ended up. Like, I don't want to be that person. No way. Nah, not me. That candid conversation where the doctor is singing about why she's singing, or not the doctor, Captain Patel is singing about, like, why am I rhyming? But why are we singing? It's just so good.
So good.
It's completely meta. The idea that some subspace anomaly can react almost consciously and produce, just how my headcanon put it together, a quantum influence that compelled biological life to follow suit. I can't explain it any more than that, because you can just throw quantum in front of anything and explain it away, but
yeah.
So
no, well, it's just so that's one of the explanations of musical theater that exists, right? When your characters are too filled with emotion to speak, that's when they sing. And when they're too filled with emotion to sing, that's when they dance. Like, that's, I think it's Sondheim that originally wrote that rule. But it's like an established thing in musical theater. And they specifically mention that Uhura says this is one of the things that she thinks is going on. So
I did like that a lot.
I like that a lot, because it does the lampshading for it, but it sets it up as how it's going to work in the episode. It establishes a rule for the episode. So, they can have a normal conversation. It's not impossible to, but as soon as the feelings come up and well up, that's when the song starts. So it was good.
There's no they got the mustard out in this episode.
It's a musical most meta. And then, of course, Kirk happens to be there for that shenanigan. The finale was really incredible, seeing people dancing full-fledged in their Starfleet uniforms. Those uniforms are not built for dancing. But yeah, it made my number 2, because I'm just so happy. I listened to it today while I was hanging cat steps for my cat on my wall. So yeah, I was really happy with this episode. We are down to our last episode in the season. If you've been following along and you're taking meticulous notes, you probably know how the three of us rated them. But we're going to go ahead and tell you anyway, starting with Kurt.
All right. Well, this was my number 2.
Okay.
I thought this was an incredibly strong episode. Tense, scary at the right points, but with just the right dash of humor every now and then, especially brought to us by our special guest star of Montgomery Scott. Loved seeing this iteration of him. I thought that actor did an incredible job bringing him to life, and it felt like a mesh of James Doohan and Simon Pegg's interpretation of the character. And yeah, just the whole thing all the way through. The only reason why I didn't put this as my number one is for the title card of To Be Continued. I can't rate it as the top episode because it's not the complete story yet. And so, but the story that we did get was so incredibly well done. While I am not a huge fan of the retcon of what the Gorn are like, once they decided to make that choice, they're doing great things with it. So it works for the story that they're telling.
I think that's an excellent take, and you rated this your number 2.
Yep.
I made this my number 4. Again, no time travel, sorry, but just the ending was so tense. I thought we were going to get a Riker fire moment. I was waiting for it. I was begging for it. I was telling him to do it. It's like, say fire, say fire. It's a close up on your face at the end of a season. Come on, say fire.
Dun dun dun.
Exactly.
Dun dun dun.
That was a 3-month wait through a summer. We're looking at 1.5 to 2 years for this one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, SAG-AFTRA strong.
Mm-hmm.
But I am pleased that we got a strong To Be Continued message at the end. I think the last one we got was that first episode of season 3 of Lower Decks, where the captain was arrested. Or maybe it was the last episode of season 2. I'm uncertain, but she got arrested and they went and bailed her out, and it was over and done with really quickly, where I thought it was going to be a full season. Instead, that's what we got. So, yeah, I think what they're doing to the Gorn is they're going to bridge continuity between what we saw in TOS and Star Trek Online, where they established that the Gorn, I'm going to say hegemony. Is it hegemony?
It's hegemony.
Hegemony. I'm going to say that a lot. Okay, so the Gorn hegemony, they're established as being very deeply genetically altered with a caste system, and that the different styles of Gorn that we see are actually different castes of Gorn, and each of them has their own fundamental purpose within that society. And as they age, I don't really understand more about how the caste system works beyond that, but I'm figuring as they age, they will become slower and more docile, like the one that we saw in TOS. Did I say where I put this one? Number 4?
Oh,
Yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
Okay. Right. So, yeah, it's very tense. I was electrified most of the time while watching this. I really, really appreciated that Captain Patel was very strongly like, you weren't here. You were safe. She is not some damsel in distress that needs saving, and adamantly was like, I would sacrifice my life, and that's my choice. So get with the program. And I only feel that those words will be all too prophetic in season 3, episode 1, especially with the focus on these enhanced Gorn weapons and these grenades that are very clearly foreshadowed will be being used to freeze things. And it's going to give Pike a sense of something about being willful in your choice to die, which has been haunting Pike since Discovery Season 2. So, yeah, this was definitely a thrill ride all the way through. It's at number 4 because I'm a sucker for time travel and musicals, but other than that, this was my favorite non-time travel, non-musical episode of the season.
I also
Very
really liked this.
odd.
It is, yeah. It's interesting rank structure you got there.
Yeah.
I also really like this one. It's my number 5 because the top 4 slots are just so competitive in this season. It's a great season. I like the fact that they established the name of the Gorn government as the Gorn hegemony, which is something that's been in beta canon for 30 years at least. Right now, it's canon. I like that take the same one that Dag took about how this establishes the Gorn as having like what looks like a caste system or some sort of like weird developmental system where they change dramatically what they look like and act like as they age. Like the younglings are feral. They don't have intelligence clearly. But this older single Gorn soldier was trying to hack the computer system. Yeah, neat. Fuck
And
it.
I didn't mention this, but he looks just like Slar from Enterprise.
Yeah. He had the same face as the Enterprise one,
Right.
though a bit pointier. Better
Well,
graphics.
Better graphics, but also, the spacesuit. Come on. Like, these guys are clearly smart. He was trying to hack the system for